So black people have fought the hard fight to keep our voting rights since we basically earned the right to vote. After the 1965 voting rights bill was passed, there weren't that many challenges to the law that got any traction. But then as the number of black elected officials grew exponentially and the power of black voters was really starting to be seen, the threat to our voting rights started to grow. And by 2011, Section 5, which we're going to get into of the Voting Rights Act, which states that states needed to seek permission before changing laws, started to be challenged and challenged and challenged. Ultimately, the Supreme Court did something about that. And then we saw tactics like voter ID, other ridiculous voting requirements, cuts to early voting, no pre-clearance being needed. All of these different things popped up to disenfranchise black and brown voters. And all of this, not surprisingly, coincided with the election of the first black president. And so here we are now with states like Georgia and Texas that are really flexing boldly with their voter suppression tactics. And we've got Congress kind of doing nothing, which, you know, Congress does too often, but considering in front of them the John Lewis Act and the For the People Act, which would ultimately right-size a lot of what we're seeing around voter suppression. I want to bring in to join us to discuss where all of this stands so that we can get an update on voting rights. Black Voters Matter Fund co-founder Latosha Brown, who is fierce and fabulous and our warrior for justice. Latosha, thank you so much for being here with me to break all this down.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for opening up with this topic. We really need to discuss what is happening in voting rights in this country right now.
Yeah, and I appreciate you so much because you have been very clear that black voters matter and making sure that we're organizing and we're mobilizing and we're flexing our power, which is all that I want to amplify here on this show. But I also want to make sure that people have some framework for how we got where we are right now. So I want to back up a minute and just explain to people what happened that essentially rendered the Voting Rights Act in 1965 that Martin Luther King Jr. and so many others fought for, John Lewis, blood, sweat, and tears, literally bodies, over voting rights.
That's right.
We get this bill passed. We're moving all along. You know, we've getting more people, there are black people starting to get elected to Congress, etc. And then in the early 2000s, the Supreme Court, it was 2013, the Supreme Court had a decision that ultimately eviscerated Section 5. Can you talk about what pre-clearances and what happened that put us in this vulnerable place that we are right now with voting rights?
Absolutely. You know, even before I talk about 2013, you know, going back to the Voting Rights Act, because I do want people to have the context of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, while it was far, far ahead of what we had, right? And it made a tremendous impact on black voters being able to participate in the process and other voters as well, that it was still even a compromise in 1965. So in many ways, we never achieved the perfect act, or we never were at the point that we said voting rights was ingrained, that it was fully protected. But what we had was the Voting Rights Act of 1965 that had some real strong protection mechanisms. And one of them was the pre-clearance clause. It was Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. And in 2013, in Shelby County, Alabama, in my home state of Alabama, which was also the historic place of the vote where the voting rights battle took place, you know, here we have in Shelby County, which is a northern place kind of outside of Birmingham, close to Selma, that there was a case that was brought that challenged and said it was discriminatory, that we no longer needed, no longer needed the Voting Rights Act, the pre-clearance clause. And what the pre-clearance clause did is in those states that had been bad actors, that had a history of preventing people from voting in the process of marginalizing voters, you had to get pre-clearance if you made any changes, if you were trying to change polling sites, if you were trying to do any major changes to voting rights or that would impact voting rights, it had to be either the federal courts, the DOJ or federal judges had to actually sign off on it. And so once you took away the voting right, once you took away the pre-clearance clause, what that essentially did is it took away the teeth. It took away the ability, and it was almost like the states, the very states that had been bad actors, were now governing themselves. That they, in fact, and what we saw, that they, in fact, would be the ones that would govern themselves. And they knew that voting rights had been solved. That issue had been solved. And what did we see? as a result of, as soon as that happened, what we start seeing is massive, massive closings of polling sites all across the country. We start seeing bills pop up like voter ID bills and other bills that restricted access to the ballot, that in normal circumstances, what you would have seen is a pre-clearance clause actually protecting. But in fact, when that got pulled out of the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court made a ruling that essentially said, we no longer need that, right? We've solved that issue, right? And so as a result, what we're seeing now, we're seeing the remnants of that. We're seeing the remnants of that. And so, you know, and it didn't stop there. You know, this year, there was another section in there as well, Section 2, right? Which was also, the Supreme Court ruled earlier this year on a case that was in Arizona that, quite frankly, was a case that impacted indigenous voters, that indigenous Native American voters in Arizona literally were voting. That many of them live on reservations, and they have post office boxes, right? And so they were being discriminated and prevented from voting in the process if they did not have a physical address. Although, in terms of their place of residence, they don't have post office boxes. I mean, they don't have physical addresses. And so what we saw is the Supreme Court basically stripped Section 2, that essentially, when you boil it down, it says, you know, yes, maybe a law was created and it has a discriminatory effect, but if we can't show the intent was to be discriminated, so it is okay if the impact is racist, right? But long as we can show that they didn't have the intent. Even though the outcome is racist, the intent wasn't racist, so it's okay.
Oh my God. So a couple of things. Thank you so much for that breakdown, because I think that most people don't quite understand how we got here in recent history. And the idea, and I just liken, you know, I remember the times that all this is happening in. This is the Obama era, where people were using language like, oh, we're post-racial, and because there's a black president, we supposedly solved racism, and like that's over. And that's exactly, frankly, what the heart of the Supreme Court has been so far, to say, oh, that's not broken anymore, it's fine. Black people are doing their thing, they're like winning stuff, and like they're okay, right? That is the fallacy of it all, which is completely ridiculous. When we come back, I want to talk about what's in front of us right now that could rectify, I think it could rectify the situation. Oh. We're going to come back. We're going to keep talking about voting rights with Latosha Brown, because all of this is just so fascinating, y'all. Stick with us. We'll be back in a minute. I'm back with Latosha Brown, co-founder of Black Voters Matter, and I want to just put up on the screen real quick 2 bills that are in front of Congress that could actually do something to address the voter suppression that we're dealing with and the voting rights challenges that Latosha just spelled out for us that were caused, frankly, by the Supreme Court. The John Lewis Act and the For the People Act right now are waiting to be passed in the Senate. The For the People Act, and I'm going to let Latosha jump in and really kind of break this down for us, but the For the People Act is essentially a big bill that says we're going to do something to shore up our democracy and make sure that everybody's got access to vote that is fair, unequivocally across just across all states. So they're going to make sure that we've got universal voter registration, that there's nonpartisan redistricting commissions, that we can have standards for mail-in ballots, which was a big decider during COVID. The John Lewis Act would ultimately fix the pre-clearance problems that Latosha was just mentioning, where now states can just do whatever they want and nobody's going to check them, boo. Well, John Lewis Act would check them. So I want to bring Latosha back in here to just talk to us about where are we right now on Capitol Hill. What is happening with the Senate and these bills that are just kind of in limbo right now? We know this is a problem. Democrats know that they will not get elected if voter suppression continues to happen and black people are blocked from the ballot box. And yet, here we are. Nothing's moving. What is your assessment of what's going on up there on the Hill?
You know, here we are in this moment that we should not be. And in the last point, when I was raising in the last segment, I think it's important for us to know that this has been an ongoing, concerted, coordinated effort to marginalize and disenfranchise black voters in this country and voters of color. That when we're looking at the demographic shifts in this nation, what we see is that we see the browning of America, and what we're seeing is an attack on voting rights because of that. We're seeing it in states like Georgia and Texas that are rapidly expanding as majority minority states. And so in that, what we see right now, I think that when we're talking about these 2 the two bills that are in Congress that are at a standstill in the Senate, what we are seeing is that there is actually a compromise bill that's being considered right now called the Freedom to Vote Act. And then the Freedom to Vote Act, which is basically a lot of the pieces that came out of the For the People Act, the big distinction between the For the People Act and this Freedom to Vote Act is that there's a stripping of a lot of the issues around dark money, gerrymandering, some of the other pieces that were in there. But I think that is really important for us to put pressure. We have to put pressure. We need both of those acts. Why do we need both of those acts? We need federal legislation that actually sets a national standard for voting. It shouldn't matter whether you live in Alabama or whether you live in Iowa or Montana. You should have equal and fair access to the ballot. And many of the states in the South where we work in and Black Voters Matter, sometimes they don't even have no excuse on absentee ballot voting. So you can't even vote absentee unless you have an excuse, right? Yet in other states, it's easy. You can you can actually register to vote the same day that the election is taking place. And so what we need is a standard, a federal standard that does not punish people because of where they live or what kind of state they live in, red, blue, or otherwise, so that they have access to that they have freedom to vote. The second thing, though, is we also need the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act, because that in itself is going to actually help take care of the pre-clearance, what I talked about earlier. We need legislation, federal legislation, that is actually going to build some oversight on these states as they're seeking to shift and marginalize and change the voting laws. And so we need both of those things. This is the moment we need to understand that there's an attack, a concerted attack on Black voters and voters in this nation. What we also have to get our white allies and white citizens to see is that their fate is also tied into us. That there's no way that when you attack Black voters, while the impetus is attacking Black voters, that the impact will impact all of us as voters. It will actually help unravel democracy. And we're seeing that happen all across the world right now. And that's where we are in this nation. And so I think it's important for us right now to put pressure on the Senate, to put pressure on the president, that we have to have federal legislation. And I do think the Freedom to Vote Act is some legislation that we need to seriously push, and we certainly need the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act.
I want to put up the map here to just put a fine point on what Latosha's saying about voting restrictions all around this country right now and where they're really happening. There is a patchwork of laws across this country that makes it so ridiculous and untenable for all of us. There's no reason that there shouldn't just be some single kind of rules around how we all vote, and it be the same from state to state, and it makes sense. And right now, as you can see, it doesn't make sense. And then there are all these states that are intentionally being restrictive with their voting laws. Latosha, you just mentioned the Freedom to Vote Act, which is kind of a bridge that is stripped of a lot of the things that really matter in the For the People Act, because there's still this force in America, and certainly in the Senate, that doesn't want us to have an easy access to the ballot. And I want you to break down why. Like, I try to be kind about this and try to be, diplomatic about what people's interests might be in the United States Senate. But the way that I see it, all that I can say is that, Joe Manchin is in the way, and that Kyrsten Sinema is in the way, and they're just in the way, and they're not in the way for any reasonable excuse other than hugging big businesses, right? Like, they are invested in people or corporations that aren't actually our people. And so I know that you are demonstrating up there on the Hill all the time. You are lobbying. You are trying to educate people. What are you seeing? Like, what do you really think is going to be required to break through to the folks who are standing in our way? Because I can't make sense of this.
People are going to have to rise up. If democracy is to be so, we're going to have to make it be so. We're going to have an honest conversation about what is happening in this country, what has always happened. There are three things that I lift up. The first has been structural racism. Literally this entire voting process has been impacted and shaped by structural racism. That our right to vote and our fight to get the right to vote didn't start in 1965. It started years prior to that, right? And so as a result, there's always been this idea of we're going to have the propaganda of democracy without actually having the structure to facilitate, to make sure that democracy is in fact true and is and really creates a space for there to be accessibility to the ballot, free and fair access. And so I think people are going to know, as voters, We have got to put pressure. It doesn't matter. We can't allow this to be a partisan issue. If there's a Republican standing in the way, we've got to move them out the way. If there are Democrats standing in the way, we've got to move them out the way. And there are some Democrats, not just Sinema and Manchin, that are literally leading and standing in the way, but we've got to move other folks, including when we're talking about the filibuster. If we have to change and eliminate, if the Democrats have to eliminate the filibuster to make sure that we have legislation, federal legislation, to make sure that we protect the right to vote, then that has to be done. There should be nothing that stands in the way for citizens of this nation, particularly African-American citizens who have always been disenfranchised, from standing in the way. And so we have to put pressure. We have to use our vote on the local level. We have to hold people accountable who've been sponsoring these voter suppression bills. We have to hold corporations accountable that have been sponsoring those who have been sponsoring voter suppression. And we've got to put pressure right now on making sure that we demand that the For the People Act, the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act, and to the extent where the Freedom to Vote Act gets is introduced, that it gets passed. But we can't stop there. We have to recognize that this is the beginning of the end. We're going to end this idea that you can have a democracy that does not include all the citizens of this nation.
Latosha Brown, thank you so much for your work. Black voters absolutely matter, and we are going to be fighting alongside of you to make sure that we can get our voting rights secured. Appreciate you. Please come back again.